Did you know that George Lucas, the brain behind Star Wars, tried building his $1 billion museum in Chicago, but the city said no? Can you imagine turning down a gigantic gift? It sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened, and now Los Angeles is spending a fortune to make sure this rejected idea becomes a reality. But why? Why would LA throw so much money into a project Chicago didn't even want? Well, there's only one way to find out, and the reason is really shocking. The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art is a bold, one-of-a-kind concept that turns the traditional idea of an art gallery on its head. Most museums focus on specific periods, styles, or cultures, but this one is all about storytelling. Whether it's a painting, a comic book, or a movie poster, every piece in the museum is meant to spark your imagination and take you on a journey. At the heart of the Lucas Museum is the idea that art doesn't have to be highbrow to be meaningful. George Lucas has said that narrative art is for everyone. It's the kind of art that tells a story and connects with people on a personal level. Imagine walking into a room filled with Norman Rockwell's heartwarming scenes, then stepping into another space with original Star Wars props like lightsabers, stormtrooper helmets, and Yoda's tiny robe. It's like jumping from a classic storybook into a blockbuster film. But the museum isn't just about what's on display, it's also about how these pieces are presented. The futuristic design of the building itself looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, with sleek, curving lines that seem to float above the ground. Inside, visitors will find interactive exhibits, immersive displays, and cutting-edge technology that brings the stories to life. Lucas didn't just want to create a place to look at art. He wanted to create an experience, a place where people of all ages could come to learn, explore, and be inspired. The story of why Chicago turned down the Lucas Museum is one of politics, preservation, and a good dose of controversy. When George Lucas first announced his plan to build the museum in Chicago, it seemed like a win for the city. He was ready to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to bring his vision to life and promised to fund the entire project himself. It was a rare chance to get a world-class cultural institution without asking taxpayers to foot the bill. But the location Lucas had in mind sparked a heated debate. He wanted to build the museum on the lakefront, specifically on a parking lot near Soldier Field. While the site might not sound glamorous, it was public land, and some groups believed it should stay that way. The nonprofit Friends of the Parks led the charge against the project, arguing that the museum would take away precious open space and block the iconic views of Lake Michigan. The legal battle that followed was messy, and it dragged on for 2 years. Lawsuits were filed, protests were held, and the project became a political headache for city leaders. Mayor Rahm Emanuel supported the museum and tried to broker a deal, but the opposition wouldn't budge. Lucas, frustrated by the delays and the lack of support, decided to pull out of Chicago entirely. For a city that prides itself on its rich cultural scene, losing the Lucas Museum was a huge missed opportunity. When Chicago's loss became public, Los Angeles wasted no time stepping in. The city quickly pitched itself as the perfect home for the Lucas Museum, and honestly, it's hard to argue with their reasoning. LA is a global hub for entertainment and creativity, making it the ideal place for a museum about storytelling. Plus, the city's leaders were eager to show Lucas the kind of support he didn't get in Chicago. Exposition Park, the proposed site for the museum, was a key part of LA's pitch. The park is already a major cultural and educational destination, with institutions like the California Science Center and the Natural History Museum drawing millions of visitors each year. Adding the Lucas Museum to the mix would make the area even more of a hotspot for locals and tourists alike. But what really set Los Angeles apart was its attitude. While Chicago slammed lawsuits in opposition, LA rolled out the red carpet. City officials worked closely with Lucas and his team to iron out the details, offering the land and full support for the project. They recognized the museum as a cultural gem that would boost tourism, create jobs, and enhance the city's reputation as a global arts destination. For Lucas, it wasn't just about finding a new location. It was about finding a city that shared his vision and enthusiasm. Los Angeles embraced the project with open arms, proving that sometimes being the second choice isn't so bad after all. Now, I know spending $1 billion on a museum might sound like an over-the-top Hollywood blockbuster budget, but there's a lot more to this price tag than meets the eye. First, let's talk about the building itself. The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art doesn't just look like a spaceship, it's practically being built like one. Designed by the award-winning architect Ma Yan-song, the structure is a bold, futuristic masterpiece. It features curved, flowing lines and an elevated design that makes it look like it's hovering above the ground. Building something so intricate and unique requires specialized materials and highly skilled labor, which, as you can imagine, isn't cheap. Then there's the location. Exposition Park is one of LA's most prized pieces of land, and preparing it for a massive project like this wasn't a walk in the park, well, so to speak. The site needed extensive groundwork to ensure it could support the weight of the museum and handle the millions of visitors expected each year. On top of that, the city had to factor in improvements to the surrounding area, including traffic management and landscaping, to accommodate the museum's footprint. Finally, let's not forget what's going on inside. The museum will hold an extraordinary collection of art, props, and memorabilia worth millions of dollars. Protecting these priceless pieces requires cutting-edge security and climate control systems to keep them safe from theft, damage, or even LA's occasional heat waves. Add it all up, and you've got a billion-dollar project unlike anything else. If you're wondering what's behind the doors of the Lucas Museum, get ready to be amazed. This isn't just a museum with paintings hanging on walls. It's more like stepping into a giant treasure chest of storytelling. The museum will showcase thousands of pieces of art, from famous paintings and photography to sculptures and digital creations. But here's the twist. Everything on display will tell a story, making it a unique blend of visual art and narrative. One of the biggest draws is, of course, the Star Wars collection. Imagine seeing Darth Vader's original helmet up close or standing inches away from Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. And no, these aren't replicas. They're the actual props used in the movies. And if Star Wars isn't your thing, don't worry. The museum will also feature memorabilia from other iconic films, including behind-the-scenes sketches and costumes that bring Hollywood history to life. But the museum isn't just about movies. It will explore storytelling through comic books, illustrations, and even classic paintings by artists like Norman Rockwell. Lucas believes storytelling is universal, so you'll also find exhibits showcasing how different cultures and time periods have used art to tell their stories. What's more, the museum will have interactive experiences for visitors. You'll get to learn how movies are made, explore the art of animation, and maybe even try your hand at creating your own short film. Simply put, it's a museum for everyone, whether you're a die-hard Star Wars fan or just someone who loves a good story. Now, let's talk about why LA is rolling out the red carpet for this museum. Spending $1 billion might seem like a gamble, but city officials believe it's a smart investment. First, the Lucas Museum is expected to bring in millions of tourists every year, and when tourists come to town, they spend a lot of money. Hotels, restaurants, shops, other attractions, that's all going to benefit from the extra foot traffic. This kind of economic boost is exactly what cities dream of when they approve big projects like this. But it's not just about the tourists. The museum is also creating thousands of jobs. During construction, workers from all kinds of fields, including architects, engineers, electricians, and carpenters, have been hired to bring Lucas's vision to life. Once the museum opens, it will need a full staff to keep things running smoothly. That means more jobs for locals, which is always a win for the community. Then there's the cultural impact. The Lucas Museum is adding something completely unique to LA's already impressive lineup of attractions. In the end, the Lucas Museum is more than just a building. It's an investment in LA's future as a cultural and economic hub, making it a decision the city is confident will pay off big time. Now, it's safe to say that the Lucas Museum hasn't been welcomed with open arms by everyone. Some critics argue that spending $1 billion on a museum doesn't make sense when Los Angeles faces bigger problems like homelessness and struggling public transportation. They feel the money could be better invested in fixing potholes, building affordable housing, or improving the city's bus and train systems. These are all valid concerns, especially for a city that often wrestles with income inequality. Traffic is another sore point. Exposition Park is already a busy area, especially during events at the nearby Coliseum and Banc of California Stadium. Adding a museum expected to attract millions of visitors could make things even worse. Some residents worry about increased congestion, limited parking, and the impact on their daily lives. Then there's the debate over pop culture's role in art. While many people are excited about seeing Star Wars memorabilia and comic book art on display, traditional art enthusiasts feel differently. They argue that these items don't belong in a museum that claims to be about art and storytelling. To them, it feels more like a shrine to George Lucas's personal taste than a cultural landmark. Some have even called it a vanity project, suggesting Lucas is using the museum to cement his legacy rather than contribute meaningfully to the art world. However, despite all the criticisms and roadblocks, George Lucas has stayed determined. After the disappointment in Chicago, he could have easily abandoned the idea of the museum altogether. Instead, he doubled down, searched for a city that would embrace his vision. That persistence eventually led him to Los Angeles, where city leaders saw the potential of his ambitious project and were willing to support it fully. For Lucas, this museum is more than just a building. In interviews, he's explained that he wants to inspire people of all ages, especially children. He believes that art comes in many forms, whether it's a painting, a film, or even a comic book. Through this museum, he hopes to show that storytelling is one of the most powerful ways humans connect and share their experiences. This museum is set to be open by 2025, but would you say a rejected idea is worth $1 billion? Well, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, when the doors finally do open, it's going to be quite an experience. Now, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to our channel for more content on the most jaw-dropping construction projects from around the world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.